Good morning and welcome to 365 Days of Stories with Theo Mayer. Here we are on day 175. Multiple of 7. I think we're up to week 27. And last week, when I was telling stories from my life as a steward, I talked a little bit about David Rosenberg and being on his 11-acre organic farm. And some interesting memories came back to me as I was reflecting on living there. And I thought I'd bring them up. A few of these encounters that I had with animals, not only at David Rosenberg's, but then I'm going to expand from there to other places as well. Animals have such a presence in our lives if we can get into close proximity with them. And I have found through time that they are playful, intelligent in ways that we are not. Each animal seems to have its unique intelligence with which it traverses and survives and, lives abundantly upon the planet. Their talents are amazing, from the incredible bounds that a feline predator can take to the incredible birds that we have, fish, mammals, reptiles, and amphibians. There's just so many cool critters out there. And insects even. Well, when I was at David's, I had animals. I had horses and cows. But one day, a sweet little miniature Doberman just appeared at my heels while I was out tending plants. And it was like, where did she come from? No collar, no anything. And this sweet little presence entered my life. Now, not a wild animal, but the point being, animals, I believe, like our interaction and gain from it something. When I was at Hopkins Marine Station, taking subtitle communities from Chuck Baxter. And this was a class where we would go out diving 8 times in a week, in a 5-day week. Monday, Wednesday, Friday, diving twice in the Pacific Ocean, and then Tuesdays and Thursdays once in the morning, followed by an afternoon lecture by Chuck, during which I should say many people fell asleep. Well, when we dove off of the beach at Hopkins, a sea otter began to follow me in. Now, there were 30 some odd students in the class, or at least close to that, including the TAs. And here, when I would come in, this sea otter would be right behind me and come into shallow water, and I would stand there, and it would come right up to me. And everybody kind of found this remarkable, including Chuck, who actually took pictures of this taking place. What I got into the habit of doing after this otter showed that it liked hanging out with me is I would run up to some of the tanks that we had nearby, and I would grab a sea star or a sea urchin out of it and run back down to the beach and give it to the sea otter. But I didn't start doing that until after it had come into the beach with me probably a dozen times. And it just seemed like, okay, I'm going to extend this thing a little bit more. And it was a playful animal. And that's the other thing that I've witnessed in looking at the world of nature, is there's a playfulness that's expressed in so many of the species that I watch. this is something that we should carry into our own lives as much as we can, I think. We should be playful. When I was at Stanford my first year, there was a class that I took. It was called the Prison Experience. And during that class, we studied the prisons throughout California, what it was like for people to be incarcerated. And we went and visited so many prisons. And we met with people that were on death row even, chatted with them. And one of the things that came out during this, investigation into the prison system is that most of the people that end up on death row have had a common experience in their lives. That was that they didn't play when they were children. For one reason or another, play was not a part of their experience. And it really does affect us deeply. If there's something that we could learn from animals, I think it is be playful. Treat this life with an attitude of cheerful play. When I was at Mark Whelan's, I was living in Portela Valley with Mark Whelan at his place, while I did Stanford for the second time around between 1991 and 2001. And there was a road that connected Alpine Road with Sandhill Road. And then you could very easily from Mark's house get to a place called Windy Hill. And the trail would go from Sandhill Road, as I remember it was Sandhill Road, all the way up to the top of Windy Hill, which was the Coast Range. You could see way up the Bay Area, and then also all the way to the coast on a clear day. I used to go up there quite a bit. And sometimes I would ride my bike along this dirt trail. And it was road bike, but I still would do it. And quite often I would walk. Most of the time I walked and ran. As I was going up one day, a red-tailed hawk started circling me. And I looked up at it, and they have a very characteristic call that they make. And so I whistled up to it and tried to mimic that call to a certain extent. And it called back. And I continued to walk up the trail, and it stayed with me for quite some time, just kind of circling the thermals above me as I went up this trail. The next time I went out, it came back. When it saw me, it came out again and started hanging out with me as I went up the trail. Same deal happening, me whistling, it whistling back. This went on, more this time. I didn't just whistle once. Generally, I try to kind of leave critters alone when they're in the wild state. But this one was clearly coming out to play. And so I get to the top and, it's gone by this time. But every time this one year that I went out to Windy Hill to do that trail, this red-tailed hawk appeared. And it would go with me all the way. At a certain point, it started following me all the way to the top of the mountain. There was one day, it would come in really close. It would just hang out maybe, 20 feet away from me. I got to the top, Windy Hill. Good name for it because it was windy up there. And I'm standing there kind of enjoying the view, and the hawk is 20 feet away from me, locked in. Its wings are not flapping, it's not moving. The wind is blowing pretty hard, and it's just locked in, to its spot by deflecting the air off of its wings. And we're just hanging out together, looking at the view together. And it was this beautiful sense of camaraderie to be with that hawk whenever it would, all those days when I would go up there. It was my companion as I would go up that mountain. That day, this guy came up the trail. You could get to Windy Hill from Skyline Boulevard, I think it was called. I think it's Route 35. Goes along the top of the mountains there from, what was once Alice's restaurant all the way to Highway 17. And so this guy parks in the parking lot down there. He comes up the trail, which is not very far to get to the top there. And he looks at me and he looks at the hawk and goes back and forth a little bit. And he says, "Is that real?" And I said, yeah, that's a real hawk. He said, "Is that your hawk?" And I said, "Well, not really, but it just hangs out with me whenever I come up here." And he's just like, "Oh my gosh." And the hawk stayed there with him there as well, for a long time. We just all hung out. And then I started down the trail and off it would go with me and down the hill and disappear. What a sweet thing. Now where I live, Long Ridge, there is a red-tailed hawk here, and I whistle to red-tails whenever I see them. Same kind of thing. Well, this one, it perches on the telephone pole. There's telephone poles that run down the mountain, and it'll be perched on the telephone pole as I'm driving down. And I drive past it, and it will launch itself off and then come right like next to my window as long as it can. It's going way faster than I can go in my truck. It goes right past me going down the hill. Long Ridge is really steep. Go from 2,700 feet down to 1,100 feet in no time at all, in like less than a mile and a half. So it's going down, and it will land at the next telephone pole. Wait till I get there. I go past a little bit. It launches itself off again, and it keeps making these dives to the next telephone pole as I go down the hill. And I'm just elated watching this thing because it's spectacular to see this bird flying down the hill at a pretty good speed. Animals, they like our attention. I truly believe it. And what they could communicate to us if they could. I had a fly once in my house. Oh my gosh, I typically don't like bugs in my house. This fly, he was really polite, or she. A lot of them will just land on your food if they're in the house. Well, this one landed close by. I don't know, maybe on my computer or a book or something. And I'm watching it, so I'm just like, okay, I'm not going to smack this thing and get rid of it. Well, I'm going to tell you, over the course of the next couple of weeks, flies can live, like up to 30 days, I think. This fly hung out with me. And whenever I would come in the house, it would fly over. Sometimes it would land on my hand, as if to say hello. It was, again, very polite. If I scooched it off, it would fly close by and would just kind of hang out. It wouldn't get in my face. It wouldn't do anything weird. It just hung out in my house, and it would come visit with me whenever I came in and sat down at the table, the dining room table. There's a lot of intelligence in these critters that we don't give them credit for, and we will never know it if we don't spend a little time connecting with the other intelligences or the intelligence that pervades everything. But what a beautiful way to communicate. What a beautiful way to connect with the wild animals, with all these other living creatures that share this planet with us. Now, we take care of what we love. I love all those critters. I don't care what they are, who they are. If they're going to be nice, they're pretty cool to hang out with. And maybe next week I'll start with a few critters that aren't so nice that have been friendly as well. Okay. Thanks for joining. Hope that inspires you to get out there and spend a little time with some wild critter. Have a good rest of your day.